Not Board of Education, not Board of Education. Cobb County celebration, now the kids know hesitation. Board of Education. Welcome back to Not Board of Education. I am your host, Laura Judge, here with my co-host,
Andrew Cole. Nice to be speaking to everyone again. Actually, to that, right off the bat, I do want to say, if anyone wants to hop onto our social media channels or leave comments on episodes, we would love and have gotten a few questions and comments. Please reach out. We want to hear from you and cover topics you're interested in hearing about in addition to the regular kind of summaries that we'll do after each board meeting.
Absolutely, yes. So, for those that have been tracking, we did have a bit of a hiatus. Those who haven't, just enjoy this new episode.
They won't even know.
But we did have a Cobb County School Board meeting yesterday, April 24th. And so me and Andrew wanted to hop on real quick and discuss highs and lows and things that we feel that you as a Cobb County constituent should know. So let's get on into it. It was a long school board meeting. And so I'll let Andrew start with the biggest thing that a lot of people are worried about.
Yeah, so this time every year, they announce the budget. And this lets us know, some of it's total, almost copy and paste from years before, where you allocate certain amounts for certain aspects of the gigantic operation that is Cobb County School District. And so X amount of dollars is going to go to the nutrition department. And so you've got allocated funds for certain purposes. In the past, there have been special subsets allocated for questionable investments, things that might not necessarily or shouldn't necessarily be prioritized over more pressing needs. And it's been a cause for concern, communication to people in charge. This year, looking at it and going over the general budget, there wasn't anything that stood out to me to be revelatory or extremely different from years past, which I think is a good thing. Speaking of copy and paste, I think that's mostly what was done with adjustments for obviously changes in enrollment per school. But at the high level, everything seemed fairly reasonable. There's some light changes with scheduling and in-person days versus digital learning days, things like that. But no drastic changes or anything like a $50 million event center from years past. So that was nice to see and or not see, and everything was on the up and up for the general budget. There were a few questions that came up as far as these specific items that were introduced yesterday in the afternoon, and I'll pass it over to you in just a moment. I wanted to say, though, when it comes to budget approval, my big issue for the past few years is the amount of time that's given to review it after it's been provided and announced. And there are other districts in the country, there are other districts a few miles away that announce their budget and share that with the public weeks, a month in advance, so that people can really take their time, analyze it. If they have questions, they have time to maybe go to a meeting and speak at public comment, but more importantly, reach out to their board member directly or contact someone at the district for explanations around, hey, I saw this. What exactly is that? What's going into it? And there's an opportunity for a back and forth. And what I would always like to see more of is interaction with the district and the community. And I know that that is not free. It takes time and it takes availability of staff, but we're paying for the staff. This is our school district.
Absolutely.
And if people want to talk about it, I would like to see that happen more. So that's my main criticism, is that even if the budget's perfect, I would like to see it come out earlier, and I would like a larger lead time so that people could look over it and have an opportunity to talk to their neighbor, if your children are friends with other kids in class, you bump into their parents, like there's zero opportunity between when it's dropped and then the feedback session that's happening later that day. And it's just not enough time. So why even have a feedback session if you're going to do it on the same day? There's no time to review anything. and they're just ticking a box for the appearance of transparency instead of the actual provision of transparency.
Exactly. So, like, for me, I wanted to touch on two things that you said. The budget looking pretty good. Our chief financial officer, Brad Johnson, with Cobb County Schools, who it
Who's,
was just
yeah.
announced that he is retiring in a few months, I believe. So he has always been very conservative with our budget, where, you know, things are allocated where they need to be. Does everyone get what they need to get? We'll talk about that a little bit later because there was some public comments that kind of talked about that. But our budgets have normally been very conservative and done what they needed to do. And so I think our CFO and his whole team has done really well with that. But the other thing is, for those that don't know how our budget season works within the Cobb County Schools, at one board meeting, they'll announce the budget. It's the first time our board members even see the budget. It is held very close to the superintendent and his executive cabinet staff chest, pretty much. So they'll work on a budget kind of for a couple of months from what I understand, but they don't announce it until normally the April school board meeting. That's the first time the board members see it. That's the first time the public sees it. Then by law, and kind of Andrew, you talked about this, ticking a box to seem transparent. It's required by law to have public hearings or public comments about it. So Cobb County Schools does a public comments section. It's not really a hearing. There is no interaction that is normally presented in the first working session, which happens around 1 o'clock. First set of public comments are able to be given at 6:30 before the voting session at 7 when they adopt this tentative budget. Then they have one more hearing or public comments session at the next school board meeting. So you'll see another one in May. And then they approve the budget in the evening of May. So we have about 1 month to work with what they've done with the budget. There's pros and cons with the lead time on that because, yes, the financial team has worked very hard to have a very good budget. And if you start moving things around, you can mess with where money's going and who gets certain money. I've heard numerous times from our superintendent, about 90% of our budget is going to our teachers' pay. And we don't ever want to take that money out of their pockets. But also to what you're saying, Andrew, is there's a lot of things that we need to discuss about who's getting raises and stuff. One of our board members, I believe Becky Saylor, has been asking for a couple of months now with the changes at the federal level, with the income that we're getting, how does this affect our budget? Our state is also making changes to what our schools get. And yes, there is some statements about things changing to different departments, but then those departments are having their staff cut. So we don't know if all that money's coming to us, when it's coming to us. Currently, I think Mr. Johnson last answered that we are still functioning as we are to get that money, but there are plans in place to see where cuts are being made. And currently, they have not seen any cuts. But a lot of parents are worried, and that's very concerning. And I agree with you, Andrew. I would like more time to discuss the budget, even if there are no changes. There are other school districts that the financial team goes out and has a meeting to kind of present the budget to families that can't always come to school board meetings. And that kind of interaction with your constituents is super duper important, especially when we're in such a large school district that has a lot of good things that they should be able to promote that our money is paying for.
Yeah, and the timing. I know you got to draw a line somewhere. It's always going to be cyclical. But if you think about what would promote greater, broader understanding and involvement, which I don't know if they necessarily want to be bothered with, is when that gets rolled out and how it gets rolled out, and are you bringing the information to them? Okay, you drop it online. But if someone goes and looks at it and they have questions, how difficult is it to have someone in the know clarify that? Could we have X number of meetings at different, maybe at every quarter of the county instead of once in the middle of the county on a Thursday evening in late April, right before school's wrapping up? Like, things start to get very busy and very pressing for families, for teachers, for schools, period. So it's not, I don't think, the most low-key time of year, and you're dropping this with no real digestible clarity. It's there, it's public, but I do think there are ways to make it even simpler and show those higher level buckets on a one pager or a two pager so that we're walking people through general allocations and any sort of big takeaway. Like that came up over and over when I was running, was just how mysterious and complicated things feel. And so I do think there is an opportunity if the numbers didn't change at all. What we could change and improve is methodology. And that, I think, is still very much on the table. And people just don't have time or really help to understand that. And it would go a long way, again, into bridging that divide of where if you're not communicating with people, then the people feel like you might be holding out for some sort of nefarious reason. Maybe you aren't. Maybe you're busy. But if you're really pouring your heart out, really clarifying what's what, it's just going to help everyone. Okay, I get it. Thank you for explaining.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more of that.
And kind of we're about to hop into the next part about construction approvals that was at this meeting. Even if it's just, I know I mentioned the word town hall earlier because we're kind of in that season right now where folks are having town halls, but it doesn't even need to always be an interactive process like that. It can be a presentation. Even if someone from the financial department is like, hey, these are the things that we're looking at that you'll probably see in the budget come April, that people can email their board member about, hey, I saw this on this presentation. I really think that's a good thing that you're spending money on, or I would prefer the money to go here instead. If you're more informed, you can give more constructive feedback rather than everything like, why haven't you done this for me? Because we are the taxpayers and they should be able to have that conversation with us at a very high level. But let's go into some of the spending approvals that we saw on this agenda. Two of the things that I saw was the playground refurbishing or replacement. It depends on which school it was. Numerous elementary schools got some replacement playgrounds. And then in my area, I'm in the East Cobb area with Walton, Wheeler, and Pope High Schools. Walton, their scoreboard had to go through an approval process at the board levels. Anything that you saw on the construction approval?
I just wanted to reiterate one of the clarifications that Brad gave, which I thought was helpful, was on, if you look at a big high-level sheet, you'll see school name and one playground. That doesn't necessarily mean that that school only has one playground. It just means that particular one was up for being updated. They shoot to have two, I think, for management and access and time availability for the school during their schedule. And so I thought that was important. They work to make sure that structurally schools have the same, like, two per school set, so you're able to rotate and keep everything moving with all the kids that we have at our schools, which I thought was good. And again, I didn't have any real qualms with allocations there. Something that's kind of related was, I know at my daughter's school and others I've heard, you'll have to source your own funding for any sort of UV protection over a playground. And so that's been a fundraising initiative that we've had, is to get those sun shields that just kind of cover the whole play area, which I do think would also provide probably a reduction in wear and tear turnover for the, not only the like foam recycled shoes and tires ground cover, but also the playground itself. And so one is currently covered. They're working on an initiative to cover the second playground. And so that's something that I think is just beneficial and might be worth talking about and exploring countywide, is what that would mean to keep those from baking in the sun. Not that I don't have fond memories of burning my legs on slides, but if we can make it more comfortable for everyone, and probably better for everyone's skin starting out too, that might be a good move.
It's a rite of passage to burn your legs on a metal slide.
Yeah,
And
now we don't even make those
the plastic
anymore.
slides get hot.
Yeah.
My thing is that when normally I present the agenda for school board meetings, when it does come out, I kind of share it on social media, on my different channels of social media. And one of the things that made noise with the projects was the Walton scoreboard, that other schools don't have them, and why was the district paying for this? Some parents came in and they clarified that this was a scoreboard that was raised through booster fees and fundraising. It's just because the project is so large, and it was explained also at the school board meeting that the project is so large, and once it's paid for, it does become part of school property. So they kind of have to have it on their agenda and approve it to make sure that all the things are getting handled. But Walton parents and donors have paid for this. This is not money coming from Cobb County School District. And so I think that's important to mention, but I do understand that some people were confused or annoyed that the Walton area is a wealthy school district area, and there are other areas within the Cobb County School District that cannot raise that amount of money to fund things for their sports or their extracurricular activities. And so we really need to kind of have a discussion about like what that inequity looks like throughout the district as a whole. Because again, something that I've talked about a lot is East Cobb looks different from South Cobb, North Cobb, and even West Cobb where you're at, Andrew. So that's one of the things that, you know, when you see a scoreboard that's, I believe it was almost $500,000 that they have fundraised for. And I know, because I'm districted for Walton High School, I know our current scoreboard is broken. We do need a new one, but we need to have those conversations about like, how much do these things cost? These people are raising money for it. It's really, really hard for when you just see it as a line item on an agenda where, again, conversations and transparency is really, really helpful for the people in the community.
I agree. I agree. And I got to say, I lived a couple blocks away from Wrigley Field for a year when I was in Chicago, and they still hang up, you know, wooden signs for each inning. So there are other opportunities for more affordable avenues. I'm joking. I think it's fine that everyone, they raise funds and they are investing in a scoreboard, not only for Walton, but I think it's safe to say for the entire community. I really like when our schools are used for more than just 7 a.m. to 3 or 4 p.m. events. And obviously those facilities are a prime example. They leave the track around Harrison High School open for the public to use and exercise on. So I could see a world where the community comes together, raises funds to update that or pay for an improvement because it's school property, the board, and over X amount of dollars or a lasting change to school property, the board and leadership need to be involved. And it also, Chris Ragsdale brought up a great point yesterday where he said, and it makes sure that if you raise money for something and you want to make a change, there's still an approval process. So if you raised all the money to do X change, you can't just do it because you have the money. You still have to get it approved and make sure that it abides by all of the codes, mandates, and needs for the facility and the school district. So I thought that explanation was very helpful. And the lingering issue there, though, is that not what you were talking about there, Laura, not every part of the county, not every school could put an initiative together and raise $500,000 for a fix like that. And so there are opportunities. I know it wasn't just current Walton parents or anything like that. They use that, and forgive me, what's the name of the
booster?
It's not Canyon, Walton Raider
Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Canyon.
Sorry. Walton Raider Valley.
Yeah. But like that's used by other community teams and operations. So a bunch of people have a vested interest in updating that, and that's going to bring everyone together more. That kind of thing I am all for at all parts of the county. So I hope the more we can clarify that, like, hey, we've got all these buildings around, the community can use them. We could all work together and use them more with board and operations approval. I won't go down the whole McEachern usage of facilities example that I could give right now for town halls and community gatherings, but I guess I'll leave it there. There's an opportunity to have our school district and our facilities become more of a hub for community interaction. And I would like to see that as a shared avenue of cultural and community investment more. Taste of Kennesaw used to be at Harrison High School before the city pushed for it to be downtown, which I understand that too. But there's just these neat things where we could make our facilities better and our community could use it more. What's still unanswered, I'll give it back to you, is what do we do? What can we do to make sure that the more well-to-do areas of Cobb have just a like markedly, metrically better experience with the facilities that they get because they were able to raise that amount of money
Mhm.
where other areas, other schools just couldn't.
Yeah, it's really hard, and I don't have all the answers. One of the things that I realized, and you probably realized it too, that running for office and being sort of a politician is you're not going to make everybody happy. There's
Yeah.
still going to be people that say, you don't need this while I need this over here. But we can talk about that community building aspect that you mentioned of Walton High School. The Raider Valley is used for numerous activities, and when your son or daughter child is playing a sport or something and the scoreboard completely goes blank or everything zeroes out, that is really frustrating. And if you do have the funds to fix it, or you do have the, know withal to start a fundraiser to get things done and start the process, your board member, the superintendent of all the steps you need to go through, that knowledge kind of needs to be shared across the county. That's maybe where we can start at. But something else that was talked about at the school board meeting was both transportation and safety purchases. We'll start with the transportation purchases. We had, I believe it was 10 new school buses
Mhm.
and 6 Chevy Silverado trucks for our CCSD police force. Any thoughts about those purchases that we had?
I was going to ask you, I wasn't left with any doubts around where people land regarding propane versus diesel versus alternative energy powered buses. Superintendent Ragsdale's made it very clear that if things take a turn weather-wise, you do want to have something that's accessible, reliable, that can start up and run. There are issues with electric buses in the cold, whereas diesel bus is going to usually crank up, create heat, because that's what it does for energy. Anyway, long story short, we are steering away from any sort of non-diesel option because of maintenance concerns and issues that have arisen with those aspects. And in addition to the additional buses, we are also getting 6 new Chevy Silverado trucks for the Cobb County School District Police Force. And
Yes.
yeah,
Well, I mean, board member Saylor asked and was answered in the affirmative that these are replacement vehicles, one-to-one replacements. So we do have these types of trucks already. But she also asked about, because they were called pursuit vehicles. And it's really hard to hear as a parent of children in the school, especially if your children have any behavior differences or even educational differences, to hear our school resource officers have what's called a pursuit vehicle, because you don't want your child pursued. Again, safety wise, you do want to have the best for our school resource officers. So again, I think that goes into that conversation piece. I think those questions are very important to have asked and to be answered.
yes, and there was more than one instance yesterday where there were good, beneficial, informative conversations being had in front of the community, which does not always happen.
Mm-hmm.
They might have been laced with a little unnecessary animus
Mm-hmm.
because of the board member who asked and the superintendent who replied. But there was extra information provided to the community because of the conversation that occurred in front of the community at the public meeting, which is what I really like to see. So I appreciated the fact that board member Saylor asked for those clarifications. That discussion was had, and now we know here's what pursuit means. Also, information that I didn't have before, you have to be an official police department to access vehicles of that caliber, which if you are
Mm-hmm.
providing your own police force for your schools, because you're able to fund, control, schedule, etc. with more effectiveness, you have that ability now to work with manufacturers and dealerships in the area to get those vehicles for your own force. So again, everyone, it was just a nice moment, not necessarily a kind moment, but a beneficial moment for the community to learn about why things are structured this way and how we operate, which is to me what
Yeah.
those meetings should be.
And I think that's really important, is because that for so long we've had board members that have been on the board for a long time. Our superintendent has been there since 2014, so he's now going on his 11th year. And I mean, he's worked for the district longer than that. He's been superintendent since 2014. But I think those conversations are really important to have, even jumping back to the Walton scoreboard approval process. And he talked about how the process was changed so that, people couldn't just leave the district holding the bag to fix things that the community has purchased or paying off the rest of things. Because people have not been on the board 10 plus years, I think is really important. And parents, even in the district, haven't been there for 10 plus years. I think those conversations are really, really important to have so that we know that it's not one of those, well, we've always worked this way. Because it's not always the case. We made these changes for this reason, because we kind of went through this and we've hit a wall with this before. Speaking of our school resource officers and our Cobb County Police, we also had approval for more of those vapor wake canines. Those are canines that can detect unspent ammunition or anything that has to do with a firearm. They're specially trained. A little bit different from drug sniffing dogs is that they are there for that firearm safety. So the number of dogs were not discussed. That was saved for executive session, but there is a larger amount of dogs that the superintendent would like to purchase. And I believe that was also approved to go through I think it was 5-1-1. So 5 yays, 1 nay, and 1 abstention on that vote for those dogs. The superintendent had some things to say about those canines. Any input, Andrew?
Yes, yeah. Once again, we received additional information and clarity because of questions that were asked during the meeting. And I don't know if answers had to necessarily be given so begrudgingly, but the information that was provided was helpful. And so I was able to learn a recap. And to me, this is another real opportunity to be transparent, but also just helpful. People do not have a ton of time. I've gotten into this way too deep, and I don't expect other parents to go as deep as you. You're in it much more deeply than even I am. But that's why
not to be.
Yeah, I know. But that's why we're doing this show and we make these posts and try to help things be clearer. You go and look at the budget, or you go and look at the agenda for yesterday's meeting, and each item that was considered during the voting session is on a separate paper. Very little information is provided. There's not necessarily an indication of a source of funding. And so if you don't know any better and you're looking at these items on the agenda and you get to that page where you see Walton's getting a $470-something thousand scoreboard, you go, wait a second, my school's got an issue with the lunchroom. I'm making it up, but there's a big issue with operations or power or flooding or something. And I think that needs to be addressed before we're putting a new school board at Walton. There's a way to make this a lot clearer for the community. You could put it in a ledger view and have item, price, funding source, something like that. I don't know, but we put it out there. We did what we needed to, bare minimum. If you can't figure it out, that's on you. And then people get upset or concerned and they reach out, and then they're met with a reaction of these people don't even know what they're talking about. That funding is, and it's okay, well, they can't help that. What we can help is communicating even more clearly. And the dogs were no exception yesterday, where if we're revisiting a topic and someone didn't catch the initial meeting where these vaporweight canines were presented and explained in depth, maybe we could summarize that, what it is, how they function, the information that Superintendent Ragsdale provided yesterday about how they're able to pick up on that trace scent for 15 minutes after firearm materials pass through an area. That's very quick. Everyone can grasp that. Okay, that seems like a beneficial function of this. Thank you for providing that refresher. And so that's something I'd like to see more of.
Yeah, it's almost like it sometimes seems to be expected that hey, we discussed this in the February board meeting. We did a recap on the website. You need to go and read it. Again,
Yeah.
not everybody has that time. Sometimes those summaries they don't really fully go in depth about like questions that were asked and answered, how this could be beneficial to us. And again, you kind of mentioned it, Andrew, that numerous board members had questions or statements to ask. One of the things that board member Saylor, again, I believe because she was the no vote on this, is that she wanted to stay small to see how it works and everything. But board member Christodoro, who's our new board member, he had asked, had it been tested and proven? And the superintendent answered in the affirmative. My immediate questions were, where has it been tested at? Has it been tested at Cobb County Schools?
Don't worry about it. Don't ask annoying questions like that. Come on, just be okay with it.
Well, also something Mr. Christodoro has said before, kind of, and I feel the tension in the board meetings. This is one of the reasons why I ran for school board, is that he has said before, well, if you just listen, your questions can be answered. So then you don't need to ask questions. Not all the time. People have follow-up questions. People need to understand more. It's not just taking the word of, hey, this has worked in a school before. Okay, can I see what school? Can I see kids' interaction with it? I know something that Superintendent Ragsdale has mentioned is that these are not like the drug sniffing dogs, which have a tendency to be your Malinois or your German Shepherds with the pointy ears. These are the more floppy dog ears, the more friendly seeming dogs. Can I see that interaction where it's been tested at and where it's been proven at? Because that is something that we talk about a lot, of not doing these fads. And I don't think that safety is a fad ever. It's just that, again, if we're spending this money, even though, yes, it is a safety grant, that's where this money's coming from, for anyone who is not aware. The governor
wasn't, again, not provided on the page, so you have to, yeah.
Yeah, so our governor of the state of Georgia provided a safety grant, and that's where a lot of this money is coming from to get these canines. But again, all these things are the reason why people are asking questions. They're not just there to criticize, they're there to understand so that they can support the school district and what they're doing. And the more pushback that people get, the more it feels like you're trying to do something nefarious, or you just don't appreciate other constituents' voices around this. And that's where it gets frustrating. But again, if the canines that we purchased in February have been working in our schools and have been doing well, like, have they found any ammunition? Have they stopped school shootings? Again, you don't have to say specific schools that they worked in or how many cases that they've stopped, but I want to see the degree that they have been tested at with just these 2 dogs that we originally purchased.
Laura, they've been tested and proven. Don't worry about it. I think it's a reasonable question. I completely agree with your point where, okay, great, thank you. How, when, what? There's some extra, don't give away secrets. I know that's always a concern too, but just what does proven mean? Yeah, does it mean they passed a preliminary test, or were they used in action and actually stopped an event from occurring?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for a parent of student, that would stand out to, oh, wow, it actually worked. Okay, I'm more aligned with that than I was before. This is powerful, helpful information that could yield even greater buy-in if you don't take every question as a personal affront and see it as what it is, which is people with concerns expressing them, asking for information, knowing that this is a shared, very large shared resource for our community. It's just the name of the game. People are going to have questions. That doesn't mean they're annoying or agenda driven or extremists. It just means they want to know, and they could even be, I'm going to say it, a benefit and aligned with you. They could even help. If every question or request is taken as some sort of personal dig, it's never going to happen. I would like to see that gap bridged more.
Exactly. And I think this goes into our next segment very well, which is the superintendent's comments. Before we go into that, though, I just want to say, as someone who helped organize a pretty large event, as more people joined on towards the end of the event and they started asking questions that had already been asked and answered before they joined on, it was easy enough for us to explain that we went through these questions. This is why we're not doing it this way. Here's your answers that you're asking. Is it annoying? Absolutely. But it's beneficial when you have, because sometimes out of all those questions, there was one question that was asked that we were like, hey, we never even thought of that. So yes, like you can just say, hey, I thought of these things over here. I discussed all these options. I've taken these, actions to try to do that option. And this is why it doesn't work. And this is why I'm going this way. But sometimes having new comments or an extra brain in there that's like, hey, have you tried this?
Mm-hmm.
It helps. But going back to the superintendent remarks. So again, our school board has taken out board member comments, but our superintendent has remarks both in the working session meeting, which was at 1:30 this afternoon, and then again at the 7 o'clock voting session. And there were some comments that, as you like to put it, Andrew, a lot of animus was there.
Yeah.
For the working session, it was just another book has been removed, and that book is American Psycho. And again, and I just looked at the COP K-12 website. Again, it's talking about how this isn't book banning or book burning or any of those other things. However, definition-wise, when you remove a book that's been in a school that kids have had access to, it is a ban. Removal, protection of students, whatever language you want to use, you're not helping your case any by constantly saying that people are wrong by calling it a book ban. This is something that has exists for years.
It's not a book ban, it's access limitation. See, this is very subtle, but there is a difference. My issue here has not changed at all, and they run with it in a very, you want to talk about extremism? They run with it in a very extreme way when you say, hey, how are we identifying these books that we're concerned about? Did a teacher reach out? Did a parent reach out? Did a student reach out? That would be interesting to know. What features of this book have led to the concern? Is it sexual content? Is it violence? Is it some sort of consideration of religious ideals that we don't want to have present? Like, what is going on that led to this objection of it being accessible in our schools? And then are these features so egregious to overpower the artistic or academic merit of the work itself? I think these are all very reasonable questions to ask. And then on top of that, who's deciding this? How's it being recorded? How's it being voted on? And we removed American Psycho. Huck Finn is a go. What are we having conversations, or are we just gonna deal with whatever you decide?
What's interesting is when books are removed, I do look up what the book is. I have not personally read American Psycho. I don't believe I even saw the movie. I've heard people enjoy the movie more than the book itself. So this book was written, I believe, in 1991. When it came out, it was very controversial. There are certain countries that only sell it shrink wrapped because of the content in the book. So I get it, but this book has been around since the 90s. That again leads to questions of when did it come into COP schools? Again, the superintendent has been there since 20. Is it just being announced today that this book has been removed? And again, these announcements are for him to be transparent with the board. I think again, it came from board member Saylor again about like, how are these books getting removed? Who's on the committee to make these removal recommendations? And the superintendent has even given a interview with a local paper saying that he doesn't know the process. He's just kind of removed from it, and he's told, hey, we're removing this book. That is also concerning because who is making these recommendations?
Yeah.
I would love to talk to our media specialist about this. Now, again, I've read all the controversy around American Psycho. It's not something that I personally would read or even recommend my children to read. But again, I am not that parent to restrict access from other families' children if they wanted to have access to that book. I think we need to have those types of conversations.
Yeah, there's also, there's no logical ending point once you start having this discussion because the spectrum is so broad. There's a ton of violence and very inappropriate behavior in the Bible. There's a ton of violence in Macbeth. Where would this end? And
And that's what I've always said. It's a very, very slippery slope. And I mean, I know the superintendent came out very early on that the Bible has been challenged many times, but that's not going anywhere. But again, we have some districts that are around the country, not necessarily in Georgia, that are removing books that parents have never, would never even question about, and so it becomes concerning. But
I agree.
also in his comments, he talked about us parents that kind of do what me and you do and talking about what the school board does.
Don't get me started.
He called us political activists or having an agenda. And I think that does not contribute to the one team, one goal that Cobb likes to promote. Because if anyone questions the superintendent or board members' actions or votes, and I mean, I have questioned board members across the political spectrum, especially with the extending the superintendent's contract.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I don't think that that's having an agenda. Is just trying to make our schools the best they can be and not having such a high tax bill to pay for having good schools. So,
yeah. I'm almost wondering if we're ever going to get to the point where we add on a new clause to our motto, and it's one team, one goal, student success. Also, if you're not with us, you're against us. Because that seems to be the full motto for the current guard. That is just not the case. This is what comes with the territory. If you want to be running a large operation, the 23rd largest school district in the country, over $1 billion budget, and a very, very large county whose population's doubled since I was a child and gotten much more diverse. It is a complicated thing to navigate. I have a deep amount of respect for all the nuance. No one's making anyone do this. Last I checked, everyone who's working for the district opted into those roles. No one was forced to do any of these positions. So if that's where we are we going to react and operate with and serve the community that's here today? Or are we going to try and parameter our operations to limit the community and, fingers crossed, hope we could steer our entire community and county to be what we want it to be instead of operating and serving it how it is, and ideally communicating along the way so that everything gets better together. Rising tide lifts all boats. I don't understand why that's
hard because it's a very, being on the outside looking in as a parent that attends school board meetings that's run for school board, there's a large control issue there. And as someone who has a type A personality, I do like to control things as well. But when you're dealing with that many people, you are not going to get everyone on the same page. And what makes it hard for people like me and you, we can say something good about the district and that never gets heard. And it's just all criticism. And then the superintendent sits up there on the dais to say that you have contributed nothing to the district. Which again, we just talked about the Walton School Board. I have paid into booster fees. I have been a teen parent. I have been on our PTA. So to take personal digs at people, whether it's not for me personally, or whether it's for other people that speak up, that have seen things that have happened to our students, it is really hard and upsetting to see for just any parent who wants better for their kids to be considered an operative.
Yeah. And that comes up a lot too, this kind of militarization of the district with the spy services and the security initiatives. And I spoke at the meeting yesterday evening and commented on the fact that we are deliberately ignoring opportunities for engagement because we want alignment and maybe even obedience more than anything from the community. And I struggle with that because it is the community's operation. It is Cobb's. 100 years from now, it will be Cobb's, not the superintendents, not the boards. It it's not a isolated, controlled product. This is something that is a living, breathing operation and is very complicated. And if people have questions about it, I think you need to assume positive intent instead of malice and meet questions and answer them in good faith instead of not at all, which is what happens a lot of times. And so people are left wondering. And there is certainly a cynical bend to how a portion of the community reacts, because if they're routinely met with silence or resentment or scoffs or eye rolls, which I received all of yesterday evening when I was making my comment, and I by no means am claiming innocent. I am not always I'm as polite sometimes as they are. I'll say it that way. But I do think there's an opportunity to listen to what's being requested. And I think the word I've used in all of my comments over the last few years, more than any other, is engagement. If you could please just have meetings, listen to people, talk. They never do. They never do. And is that too much to ask? And that's what my comment was about last night. Like, at what price point would we be able to get a town hall where you're on stage and answer questions? How, $1 million, $2 million?
Mm-hmm.
What would it take for you to, off the cuff, talk to people and justify what's going on? I don't think that's asking for too much. It's just crazy. And activism. What is activism, Laura? If you're saying, yeah, I mean, what do you think of that? What does that word mean to you?
So what is activism? Activism is anyone who is active in their community that wants things changed. This has come up previously when I was running, because I prefer the term advocate but I mean, people are going to call you what they're going to call you. Activist, again, is someone that's asking for change, pressuring for change, versus an advocate normally gives options to make that change. Normally there's ideas to ways you can do things and advocate for that change to happen. So if the superintendent wants to use both terms to call me that and any of his sycophants, it's just something that I've learned to deal with. And while I was running, I honestly did shy away from the term, but at the same time, we see now at all levels of government that people are looking for active change and ways to make that change happen. I am happily willing to take that to the people and help them make change for the good. Political activism, they like to add a negative connotation to it just because it's not something that they're used to. They're used to making backroom deals. They're used to asking pre-approved questions. They're used to people not pushing back on them. And that is not what our society is looking for.
But Laura, what if you just went away and accepted things the way they are? Why can't you just do that?
I will not go away until both my children graduate. I literally moved into Cobb County's area because we have great schools. That is something that people agree across the board about. But I will constantly, if I see any pushback on our kids or anything else, our taxes getting raised, I pay for my house, my property, my taxes, the school taxes. I have a voice and I vote the way that I talk. So if that makes the superintendent or any board members upset, they can also go away. If they keep asking me to go away, they're not getting rid of me that easily. It's just not happening.
Yeah, I don't understand why it's such a bad thing.
Speaking of other things that he talked about at this meeting, though, was the safety town hall. For folks that don't know, we have hired a safety group called Servius Group. There has been some back and forth about who they are and what they exactly do.
They came out of the shadows.
Yes, they came out of the shadows. There was a lot of secretive presentation about this group and what they've done. Within 24 hours, the AJC had found out who they were exactly because they only used their first names. But the superintendent said that because of the Appalachia shooting, that he was going to have Servius start doing town halls. However, the first town hall or town halls that for safety that they were going to discuss was sex trafficking. And I did not know, and maybe Andrew, you can help me, how a school shooting attaches to a sex trafficking town hall.
That's because it doesn't. And this is more veiled. I mean, you talk about activism, pursuit, and furthering of cool, I mean, almost stereotypically biased talking points and like culturally imbued concerns, I think could be classified as activism if you're pushing certain concerns over others.
Mm-hmm.
What that almost sounds like a definition to me. So one, I think that there's an opportunity to explore some hypocrisy there. Two, I know of zero people who are, well, in my world, who are in favor of human trafficking. So obviously that is on the table to explore, inform the community about, work together to reduce, communicate available like hotlines. If there are local organizations we could partner with or inform, like, yeah, all for it. That's fine. Is not related to shootings at a
Mm-hmm.
school or gun safety, which you and I have been asking for those topics to be explored with talking about in good faith or at all publicly
Mm-hmm.
for years now. And we've had zero town halls. I was just happy there was going to be a town hall at all.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was going to be hosted by hired outside employ or not even employees, but hired firm, and uh, I
But it would
just
be in the school building with our school resource officers. We also have, we do have a relationship with the county police or even the local municipal police, depending if we're in a municipality, that could also be at a town hall. We've done it before with the Democratic school board members. But again, the superintendent said because of safety reasons that we could not have an in-person town hall. And so I have been pretty vocal, at least on my personal social media pages, with basically calling them cowards.
was it because of Marjorie Taylor Greene's town hall?
Yes. So Marjorie Taylor Greene just had a town hall in, I guess, similar area.
Ackworth.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little northwest, but yeah.
Yeah. And she prefaced it with a video saying that she wants people to sit down and listen, which is not the purpose of a town hall. Again, that's a presentation.
It's a lecture.
Or a lecture from people that attend it. It was more of a rally because it was just it was pre-approved questions. It was a lot of the talking points to stay on message and just videos of her in Congress voting for certain things. Any outburst or anything else, police were forcibly removing people. 2 people got tased, 3 people were arrested. And so the superintendent used this opportunity to point to politics, even though he said our school should not be about politics, about why we couldn't have a town hall. Again, saying that we've had violent outbursts at school board meetings. Outbursts, yes. Violence, no. The only violence that we have seen, and Andrew, you can attest to this, was there have been open records of our school district executive staff planning to move the sign up outside where people got hurt. And they were claiming that there will be fireworks. So they were hoping to have violence. So again, if you don't want pushback from the people that are trying to speak with you, one, maybe don't talk about them on Teams messaging, which is able to...
They don't do that now. They use Signal Chat, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, our Department of Defense also uses Signal Chat.
What could go wrong?
But what? Don't talk about parents, and then 2, don't put their lives in danger because you don't want to hear that pushback from people. We have, as someone who has been involved in the school district for a while, I've seen the sign up change at least 3 times. From signing up in person to then signing up online, then to, having a certain amount of time to sign up beforehand, to being told that you're gaming the system when it went to online, when literally these are families that want to be heard, to have things talked about. And as more people get involved, the more they'll see. And I think the superintendent saw that yesterday because we did have public comment from some of our CCSD employees.
Yes. Yeah, I was really moved and happy to see one of our department's mechanic and bus fleet maintenance staff came out. I think it ended up being 2/3 of that department showed up to voice their concerns about pay and retirement benefits and just general staffing. They are
equipment, the time
Yeah.
that they are made to work.
Yeah, they said they've got 3 hubs, all of which are understaffed, all of which are currently booking shifts at 12 hours ahead sometimes. So people are pulling 12-hour days. They mentioned one employee all last year worked 5 days a week, 12 hours a day, all last year, didn't take a day off. And stuff needs to get done. People need to be rewarded for their efforts, sure, but that's a guaranteed way to not only burn people out and have to find more employees, but also you're playing with fire a little bit. I mean, tired employees, overworked employees make mistakes. And at a certain
And
point,
we're
that's not the
talking about our
employee's fault.
buses that carry our
Yeah.
kids.
Oh, totally, totally.
I mean, when you're not taking care of your employees like that and you have people working on equipment that carries our children to and from school every day, that becomes a problem. And to see 2/3 of a department, and normally knowing that CCSD employees don't come to speak at school board meetings because any, pushback to the system is looked at as activism. I'm sure, and you can probably speak to it because you were there, Andrew, I'm sure board members came to speak to those speakers versus everyday parents that have been showing up for months. But it takes that level of people coming to show up. Same thing with the coaches that were fired that
Yeah.
have been reinstated, is that you have to have a large movement, which again, political activism, because when you talk about policy and who is affected, that is politics. I don't know how else to put it. What people are most worried about is the extremism. And so, yeah, I would not be surprised if they didn't call that whole Department of Fleet Maintenance who showed up political activists.
Unfortunately, and at a certain point, too, it's just communication. I mean, you could argue anything is, but politics is communication. I'm going to say working for a public department is going to involve a certain amount of communication.
Mhm.
And do people take time out of their schedule to go to a facility and wait in line and sign up, get other people involved to have fun? Or
Absolutely
are
not.
are they speaking from
They
experience?
have reached the
Absolutely
end
not.
of they have reached the end of their rope, and as the
Yeah.
first commenter has said, had gone up through the proper channels, had gone up
Mhm.
through the chain of command, and still had someone look at their phone and not know what their concerns are. And that is something
Yeah.
that I knew very, very early on. One of our school Facebook groups was started because a parent went through all the proper channels for what her child was going through. And I saw the school board member at the time, he's no longer on the board, still ask her, who are you again? What's going on? And this had been going on for years, and police were involved. So to
Wow.
get treated like that is very, very hard. But we could criticize the district all day. We do have some good news to
Yeah.
talk about.
That's true.
And
That's
that
true.
is the board recognitions and our personal student spotlight. This is something that I do love that the board does, is recognize people in the district. I just wish it wasn't so many at once.
It was 30 minutes of last night's meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but I mean, we have people that do great things. I'm also on our council PTA, and we just had our award ceremony, and we have 35 schools that we represent.
Yeah.
Lots of people getting awards at one time, and I get it. It's just that, yeah, I love seeing our student and staff achievements. Any ones that stood out to you that the board recognized? And then we'll go into our own personal student spotlights.
Yes, yeah, the debate teams stood out to me just because that was something that was always maybe a little too prized growing up, being the son of a lawyer who was the son of a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Dinner table debates were a common thing. But I don't know, I think it's a valuable, obviously valuable skill, and being able to justify views and actions is key. And then to have teams from our district that are performing well at the highest levels is just really nice to see. And you could see, it was just fun to even see those groups in the lobby. Like there's a certain amount of just excitement and pride and poise for being recognized and having, received those accomplishments. So I do very much like that we take the time to acknowledge those groups. I also fully acknowledge that it would be a lot to have an entire marching band turn out, but some departments and some teams and some extracurricular groups do not get recognized, I think, due to their size or operational high maintenance nature. But yeah, I like that we do it. There were a lot, and I know they're probably trying to squeeze them in before the end of the year too. So I get that, and all the competitions that occurred in the spring. So that one stood out to me. What about you, Laura?
Yeah, so one of the students that got recognized, Max Lynn from Dodgen Middle School for the math competition. I'm a bit of a math nerd. Science is my background, but I do love equations and everything. So I love seeing that. I love seeing those types of recognitions. It's especially for academics. It doesn't always get, normally you see a lot of sports recognitions. And so when you start talking about academics, or like you said, even the performing arts, when we're talking about a band or anything else, I'm sure both you and I have done many of band competitions, and what goes into that, it's just amazing, and I love that that gets recognized. And so
And Wheeler High School basketball state champs. I mean, there's something there too where I'd like to see the county work with the school district and, like, I don't know, put a banner up at the Marietta Square or 41 or something. Like, it's a big deal. And
yeah,
I just think it'd be cool.
and that's part of my personal spotlight too. Even though it was a board recognition, the Wheeler High School boys basketball team and how they're state champions, they were recognized both by the school board as well as our Cobb County Commission.
Hmm.
And I was there last year when they were recognized by our commission as well. They are just a great team. I love going to, I've been to a few, I haven't been any this year, but to some of their basketball games. Just seeing the level of athleticism and knowing some of the knowing of, I don't know them personally, knowing of some of the coaches that, you know, shape that team, and even the principal, like, he's very involved in like supporting those students as well. Just seeing his pride, that is, I just love it. I love seeing it.
Totally, totally. I agree. There's one more that wasn't necessarily mentioned. Again, it'd be complicated to do it, but they did acknowledge it online, and there were a couple articles that ran, I saw, the last few weeks too. The Pebblebrook Marching Band, the Mighty Marching Machine, was invited to be a part of the parade, the National Cherry Blossom Parade in DC. And
That's
so they went
amazing.
there, got to see a bunch of the sites in DC, meet Senator Warnock, and it was just a really cool opportunity for them. They are, you want to talk about fun and just an impressive operation. It's a very large band, and I went with my daughter to College Exhibition last fall and saw them, and it is just a blast. There are different high schools in the county that focus on different methods, and you've got your kind of like BOA angle, and you've got general artistry, and then you've got like a HBCU angle, and the energy of Pebblebrook's marching band is just what can't be topped. It was really, really fun to see him. So I love that our county's being represented at the highest level with some of our great operations. It's just really fun to see.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I am again going to take a point of personal privilege, is that the honors chorus, at least my daughter is part of that, and they will be performing at the Braves game on May 4th. And I'm really
That's
excited
really
to see
cool.
that. They'll perform the national anthem, and so they're working with their chorus director to you know, be the best that they can be, and that's really awesome to see. And again, like, these are the things that I love about our district, and seeing what our district is able to do, and just letting our kids excel at those types of things.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. We have a very, very strong core operation. There will always be opportunities for improvement on the outside. I would like to discuss those constructively. And I do think one way or another, information and awareness is being boosted because of what the work you do. Shows like this, conversations that are being had at board meetings before and after board meetings. And together, we can all, I mean, this is ours to
Yep.
improve and grow and change. And so the more we talk, the more we provide examples, the better everything gets for everyone. So that was my final thought, was just I saw a bunch of really beneficial conversations happen during the meeting.
Hmm.
The like the turnout of our mechanic and maintenance staff, seeing things like that happen in our community. Hey, we've got concerns that are not being heard, so now we're all here together. That's what it's about, is boosting awareness, having conversations. So it's been really nice to see, and I just want to see it continue.
Yep, and that's why we do this stuff. Again, it's almost part of our sign off, as we always do. We want to make you more informed as a constituency, and to know what's happening and going on, because people are busy. They don't have time to sit through a 5+ hour board meeting and to hear someone bloviate about themselves for 15-20 minutes. I mean, Andrew and I don't mind doing that, and really getting down to the meat and telling you what's going on. Also, I do make a smaller summary description of the board meeting, what's been approved, what hasn't been approved, sometimes questions that have been asked. That's an even smaller thing, but please feel free to reach out. Like Andrew had said at the top, if you see us on social media, ask questions. We will answer them here on the podcast as well. We both still have our personal website pages. Making sure you still have yours, Andrew, right?
Yeah,
Okay. So mine is laurajudge.com. That's LauraJudge.com.
Yeah, and mine is andrew4cobb.com with the number 4 in the middle.
Yeah, and so we will try to answer as honestly and, as transparently as possible. Sometimes you might not like the answer. Sometimes we'll give you way more information than you are expecting. We have been doing this for quite a while, but our biggest thing is to make sure that you know what's happening and that you can be involved, because as always, every student deserves a voice.
And every voice deserves to be heard. Thank you all for listening.